Hello, I'm Jason Harper. Thank you so much for joining us inside the beautiful First Ward Creative Arts Academy here in Uptown Charlotte.
And I'm Amy Satowski. Today we're sitting down with a panel of experts to see how they are approaching this new era of education.
The voices you'll hear today are from Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Superintendent, Dr. Crystal Hill, South Carolina Education Association President, Sherry East, Mental Health Counselor and Expert, Dr. Sharice Johnson, Providence Day Head Football Coach, Chad Greer, and Student Advisor with CMS, Eileen Debanis. First of all, ladies, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us on this extremely important topic of back to school. And the first thing we want to talk about today is something you're probably all very familiar with.
Yeah, so we know ChatGPT, Gemini, Llama, Claude, if you know, you know. These are some of the names of the top AI generative tools that are being used today.
And in just a few years, it's hard to believe, but artificial intelligence has changed our lives. It's here, you can't deny it. But with one state expert, she told me if we don't embrace this self-evolving technology, we might just be left behind. Take a look.
66% of the leaders they surveyed said they won't hire somebody who does not have AI skills.
Vera Cabiro, an emerging technologies consultant with the Department of Public Instruction for North Carolina, says some businesses won't even consider hiring a potential candidate without AI experience.
The kids that graduated last year, if they try to go into the workforce, into one of these business models, they're going to potentially be at a deficit for, if they're competing against students who had those AI skills.
But how do you balance using AI in the classroom without crossing the line and cheating?
We have to get away from that dichotomy that if you use AI, you're cheating. If you're not cheating, because they need to learn how to work with it the same way that I work with it, to enhance your own creativity, not to replace it.
The acceptance and use of AI tools is inevitable, but not all educators are on board with the bots.
The dangers of ignoring it in education are a lot greater than the dangers of embracing it. You can decide when and how to use AI, but it shouldn't just be in the driver's seat. It should be the human in the driver's seat, the human making the decisions.
So to enhance, not to cheat, found that kind of interesting. And Dr. Crystal Hill, if I can start with you, how do you see CMS students as a whole benefiting the most from the use of AI?
Yeah, so there's lots of great opportunity for our students to capitalize using AI. Obviously, there are some things that AI can do that we don't need to do ourselves anymore. But I think what's really important is that we really shift our focus on making sure that we're teaching students how to do things that AI would never be able to replace. Things such as critical thinking, things such as communication, things such as being able to analyze something and make determinations on if it is accurate, meaning it's rooted in facts, or if it's not. So teaching those skills, I think, will really definitely help our students as they graduate from high school and prepare to enter the workforce.
Sherry, when you look at, you're covering the whole state of South Carolina, how are you seeing educators there from elementary? This is not just a high school thing, from elementary to high school. How are you seeing educators have to almost change their curriculum in the way they used to teach, because now you sort of have to use AI?
I think it's been an ever-ending problem to try to keep up with technology. From the pandemic, we learned how to Zoom, we learned how to this, and now AI is part of it. Like she said, it's part of our day to day, but are we using it ethically? And are we teaching our children how to recognize deep fakes? Are we teaching them, just because you know how to use it, are you using it in a positive manner? Are you creating good things with it? For the first time ever, we have an art contest every year, and we had an AI created art that was turned in. And it's like we had this discussion on, do we allow this piece of AI art to stay in the competition? And of course the artists were like, no, because it's so much better than the normally created art. But is there a place where we create a category of AI art? I mean, where if that's the method that they are using to create the art, is that a valid form of what's going on here?
Well, yeah, and of course, students are the ones that are using this technology most, I feel like. So, Eileen, I want to ask you, do you feel that your peers are using AI appropriately? Because we talked about with Sherry of, maybe this isn't Johnny's work. Do you think that students might, or do you feel that they are abusing it in some cases to write their papers or to help them with that math problem?
I think very slowly we're figuring out what are the good ways to use AI, and I've seen students really benefit from it. They've come up with really creative solutions to specific things that they can use AI for that are obviously benefiting them and not causing any problems like plagiarism and things like that. So I think, if we're setting up, what the standard is for what can we use for AI, what can't we use with AI, students are gonna find a good way to, benefit from it and better their education from it.
When we return, the path after high school isn't as straightforward as it once was. The tricks of the trade students are turning to get a head start instead of going to college.
Welcome back to our Queen City News Back to School Special, A New Era.
We're here with our amazing panel of school administrators and officials and our student representative as we discuss the big topics that are reshaping the classroom.
So in the past, what most students would hear, and we've all heard this or said it before, go to college, get a degree, and then you'll be successful.
But now more high school students are sort of rethinking life after they graduate, right? That includes a growing trend of turning to the trades instead of traditional college.
Our students are going out into a career, something that they love doing, fixing things, working with their hands, getting their hands dirty.
It's what Bob Kessler, the campus president of the NASCAR Tech Institute in Mooresville, hears from students all the time, including Amira Flynn, who's studying robotics.
I do better doing things hands-on.
Flynn is a non-traditional student who did 1 year of a 4-year university, then served in the military, but decided to jump into a trade more than 10 years after getting her high school diploma.
I probably would have gone into a trade school if I knew more about it, because I don't feel like they give out that information a lot in high schools.
Programs at this branch of the Universal Technical Institute average about a year and focus on 6 different in-demand trades, from robotics to welding to automotive.
Many of our students are receiving job offers, accepting job offers on the day of graduation.
That's just one reason Kessler says students are being drawn to the trades. The other is security.
When you go through the welding program, you know you're going to be a welder, all right? When you go through the auto program, you know what you're going to be doing. So first and foremost, there's no uncertainty.
And with tuition costing between $20,000 to $35,000 all in, compared to a 4-year university, he only expects the interest to grow.
I think the word is just starting. I think the shift is just starting. The momentum is starting to grow. And in the coming years, I think it's going to get better and better and better.
To anyone, just getting rid of student loans, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of stress off your back.
So Island, I want to start with you. What is the general feeling amongst your peers about a trade school or, working after high school versus going to college?
I think obviously a lot of students are going to go to a 4-year university, but I've also met and seen a lot of students that, were very confident in going to a trade school or going straight into work or going to community college. And I think that while there obviously maybe is a little bit of a stigma of you should go to a 4-year university, I think so many students, are seeing their different paths and seeing all the different ways that you can get a job and do what you really want to do and choosing what's right for them and really seeing what do I want to do, not necessarily what does society want me to do.
Well, yeah, and I think that is a good question for Dr. Johnson of when you have those two polar opposite ideas, how can families navigate that where the parents might have a certain expectation and the student is just really, they know themselves and they know that that's just not the path they want to take. How can families deal with that?
Sure, I think one of the things that families can do is to centralize the conversation around values. A lot of times when a parent is pushing a child to go a particular way, it's because they value their safety, their security, and making sure that they're financially stable, but also do you value your students' mental health? Do you value them being able to explore and do something that they enjoy? And is there a compromise? Can it look like, can I try this for a period of time, or can we all do some research and see what the options are? Because what happens or what's best for us as parents is not always what's best for our children.
Sherry, for so many 18, 19-year-olds that are graduating, making money now is so tempting. How do you try to balance encouraging, you obviously want them to graduate and be successful, whatever that looks like. How do you do that as an educator when you want them to have something to fall back on if a job maybe doesn't work out? That's a tough conversation to cheer them on between college and going straight into the workforce.
I think a huge problem that we are seeing in in high school especially, I taught high school, is that we are pushing children to a 4-year degree, and that's your success rate. So we need to reset and say a 4-year college degree does not necessarily mean you're unsuccessful. A career in welding, a career in automotive, a career in electricity, an electrician, plumbing, those are the trades that we need right now. And there's this stigma around our high school students that if they express an interest in that, they're somehow less than their peers that say they're going to Clemson or Carolina or whatever to get a 4-year degree. And a lot of times the 4-year degree students, they're going because of the pressure of, oh, if I don't go, then somehow I'm less than my peers. So we really need to get away from our students believing that being a plumber or being a welder or working on cars is any less than an accountant or a banker or a teacher.
Well, and Dr. Hill, as one of the biggest school districts in the entire state, what is CMS doing to expose more kids or encourage them to kind of, pull back that stigma of automotive or HVAC trades? What conversations are happening at CMS about that?
Well, some of my panelists have talked about language matters. So in K-12 education, we went from a space where all kids need to go to college, all kids need to go to college, and then it kind of shifted to all kids don't need to go to college. But I've really challenged our team and our teachers to really start thinking about reframing that. So I think when we say not all kids need to go to college, we're saying not all kids need to go to a 4-year university. But the fact of the matter is that all students need some type of post-secondary education. And so what I mean by that is some kids are going to graduate and they're going to go that 4-year path. Some kids are going to graduate and they're going to go to a technical school. It's still post-secondary education. I think the thing that we don't want to allow kids to think is that you can just go through your regular K-12 education, your regular credits to graduate, and the likelihood of you getting a good paying job after you cross that stage without anything else other than basic high school courses is not the truth. And we're selling our kids, we're doing them a huge disservice by using that language.
And you never know what opening a door for a child just one time, what that'll do for them. Thank you.
From the classroom to the locker room, it's a new era for student athletes.
How the prospect of getting paid to play is reshaping sports in school. Thank you for watching our Queen City News Back to School special, A New Era. While the rules on the football field and the basketball court have largely stayed the same, we're seeing a seismic shift among student athletes and their desire for them to get paid right now. So for this conversation, we'd like to bring in the head football coach at Providence Day School here in Charlotte, Chad Greer. Thank you so much for joining us. As we all know right now, we can't talk about sports without mentioning 3 little words: name, image, and likeness, better known as NIL.
So when we talk about that, I mean, NIL is giving players a chance to make real money, not just at the college level, but now in high school, but apparently not everyone can get a piece.
That's the recruiting pitch now.
Myers Park head football coach Chris James has been hearing the word NIL for years now from his athletes looking to move to the next level.
Kids come back from visits, and instead of talking about the campus or the mascot or sometimes even playing time, I think the conversation NIL comes up first a lot.
For a very brief moment this year, his own players had the green light to also cash in. Until this past June, when the North Carolina High School Athletic Association reversed its decision to allow public school athletes to take advantage of NIL.
At the private school level, they are allowed to have NIL, which creates a different monster.
Now that the rule is in effect, Coach James says it's just another element to juggle.
It's definitely a disadvantage to a certain extent. I've been at private school, I've been at public school. Just the difference alone, forget NIL, there is a significant difference.
And while he's not worried about his own players transferring to private schools specifically because of NIL opportunities, he can't rule them out completely.
You hope you can keep your players around for a long time, but if you got high-level guys and guys that have a potential and it's the market for that, they might leave. And you just have to know that as a coach.
Right. So Coach Greer, obviously we just heard from Coach James there at Myers Park, and he's more dealing with his players talking about NIL in college, right? That they come back from their visits and they're kind of wondering what those deals look like. But this is the first year that private schools where you coach will have
the opportunity, those players, to cash in on deals of their own. What do you want the outside world to know about the realities of NIL at the high school level?
It's not so much that I want them to know. I think it's just, the facts. I mean, it's certainly a real issue in college. So our kids that are being recruited, it's part of the recruiting process now. So as a high school athlete at any school going to college, NIL is a very real part of that decision factor. I used to have 4 boxes. There's a 5th box now. I mean, it was academic, social, spiritual, and football, and now you add a money box. And to different people, they have to decide how important is that to their process.
Dr. Johnson, I want to ask you, because you've got a son who is a D1 athlete, who has an NIL deal. When you look at the pressure that, or let's start with that, is there pressure that's added to your son and to these other athletes that want to be the best, not only as a student athlete with academics and as an athlete, but now you've got this pressure of, this guy's making money, this girl's making money, I can get on this too. How does that change the pressure that's given to these athletes?
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure in NIL, whether it's from athletes, parents, families, coaches. It really stretches, and how each athlete handles that is going to be different. I think athletes by nature put a lot of pressure on themselves because they want to be best. They want to be great at what they do. You do add in a dynamic when money is attached to it, because with money also becomes responsibility. And so if they're not being prepped for that responsibility, how do you financially manage what's happening? What happens if this NIL deal is not only based on your likeness, but your performance, and you're not performing as well? That's going to create a different kind of pressure when you hit a slump or something that you wouldn't necessarily suspect. So I think there needs to be a lot of support around at any level.
I think this is similar to the AI conversation we had, right? It's here, you kind of can't fight it, and a lot of states are starting to adopt their own NIL framework. There's at least a handful. It's hard to get a reliable source of what states are doing what, especially because it's mixed. Public school is not okay in North Carolina, but private school is. But Coach, is this adding any sort of dynamic into more kids wanting to, hey, I'm interested in coming to Providence Day, and they mention NIL specifically?
Never had that conversation with a kid or a family ever. It's a non-issue. I mean, my understanding, the average NIL deal for high school across the country, where they're doing is like $60. It's a hamburger deal at the local place. I mean, truly, where it should be in the public schools. It should be a place like Scotland County or Richmond County or the mountain towns, Swain County or Tuscola, or those places where they draw huge crowds, the town shuts down, everybody comes, they generate hundreds of thousands of dollars off revenue off of their video boards or their in-game marketing. Let those kids benefit from that. Let those kids buy cleats or team packs or things that they need, or equipment for the school that the programs may not have through the public budget or whatever. And I think that's what makes sense to this to me, is I don't care, any student that has a talent or the ability to make money off their name, image, and likeness, whether they're an athlete or not, they're a pianist, and you're great, and you have an opportunity to make money off of your talent, you should be able to do that.
A lot of people are talking about it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The landscape of mental health has definitely bust at the seams. It was always there, but the pandemic definitely opened up a huge can of worms that has not been closed.
After the break, it's hard to be a kid. We'll talk about how to make sure students are mentally well.
You're watching Queen City News, Back to School, A New Era. So we've covered a lot, right? We've talked about AI, trade schools, and NIL deals, but if there's one topic that's become very, very prevalent over the past couple of years, it's mental health.
And we don't have a 2-hour special just on mental health, although we should. And so Dr. Therese Johnson, I'm going to start with you as a mental health counselor. And I know we've talked before, especially since COVID, your doors have just been busted wide open with mental health issues, not just for 17, 18-year-olds. We're talking all the way down to elementary schools. What's going on? Why is mental health the topic of the year?
The landscape of mental health has definitely bust at the seams. It was always there, but the pandemic definitely opened up a huge can of worms that has not been closed. I think one of the things that we see when it comes to students is the influence of social media and the dynamics that are there with all of the images, the pressure, the comparison that they're taking in. I remember myself when I was younger, most of the time the comparison was only you and the person next to you or around you. You didn't have knowledge of everything that everyone else was doing.
Eileen, as a high school senior, what are the mental health, I just can't even imagine the loads that you guys are juggling, the pressure that you have on you to not only finish high school at the top, but then to move on with some of the other things that we've talked about here. What do you feel like your peers, what are you dealing with the most? And do you feel like you have a safe space where you can share that with other people?
I think, the most important thing is making sure that students still have some sort of safe place in their school, because they may not have that at home, they may not have that with their peers, and making sure that maybe if it's not just their counselor, that it's a teacher, that, it's a certain club, and making sure that our students can be represented in their schools in certain ways.
Sherry, I know South Carolina over the past couple of years has made a considerate effort to have more mental health counselors in schools. What does that effort look like, and how is that progressing?
Well, we've been advocating for that for years, because a lot of times the students bring in what we call that invisible backpack of issues that teachers, we're used to teaching content. And so when they come in with the social emotional issues that they have, it may be loss of a family member over COVID. I mean, we've had lots of people that lost family members over COVID, and I'm not sure we came back to school and talked about that. We just said, here we are, we're back to normal. We didn't talk about what impact or what your family went through during those years. We've seen huge behavioral differences when they came back from being home for those 2 years. It's kind of like we had to retrain them. You had sixth graders who never got to transition to high school, but now they're in high school. You had kindergartners who never really started kindergarten in the normal kindergarten way, and we're going to pop you back into second grade. So those transition periods that are really important for students to transition out of elementary to middle school and out of middle school to high school, they really didn't happen. And so we didn't really deal with that very well. We just said, we're back, we're rolling, we've got to catch up. And so the pressure was really on to catch up with the learning, not so much on the emotional part of what if we just all went through. Not only the students, but the adults also may have lost family folks. So I think the push for more mental health counselors has been big for us, because our legislators said, well, you have a whole slew of counselors. I'm like, no. Those are guidance counselors. Those are career counselors. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference in a mental health counselor being available to our students and just their guidance counselor.
Well, we have certainly covered a lot of very important issues in a short period of time, and we really want to thank all of our panelists so much for joining us today. 2024 is obviously going to be a very interesting year in this ever-changing educational landscape.
And it's on us to help parents and to help students be informed and ready to tackle the world as we truly enter what we feel like is a new era. Thank you so much for watching, and we wish everyone, parents, students, teachers, educators, we hope this is the best school year ever.